Tony Burke, welcome to 7:30.
Good evening, Sarah.
Now, it was revealed last week that the husband of Antisemitism Envoy Jillian Segal gave money to the controversial and divisive right-wing lobby group Advance Australia. To be clear, she did not make the donation and she is not responsible for him, but she has not criticised it. Were you blindsided by that?
I wasn't aware of it until the reports came out, and I'd say two things. First of all, Advance is an appalling organisation, and that organisation does the opposite of pursuing social cohesion. And you can go through a long list of people who they try to push to the margins and a long list of tropes that they're guilty of using. But I have no time for that organisation at all. Secondly, and this was referenced in your question, where it's a long time since we've been a country where you would blame a woman for decisions of her husband. And so with that in mind, I don't think she's answerable for her husband. She said she didn't know about it, and I've got no reason to do anything other than believe her.
Let's go to the substance of the report. Will the government be accepting the envoy's recommendations on a system for stripping funding from universities who fail to tackle anti-Semitism, according to the envoy?
Well, I think the objective here is not to be stripping funding, is not to be cancelling people. The objective is actually to never fall foul of the need to make sure that we're combating anti-Semitism. And this is where a lot of the discussion, and I respect why, has gone straight to the edges of, well, what would the punishment be? What would the penalty be? The objective here is that you don't end up in that world. The objective here is, you know, over the last year and a half, we have seen a spike in anti-Semitism in Australia. All forms of bigotry are unacceptable, but at the moment, you know, in your question, we're focusing on this one, and it has an ancient, ugly tradition. We want to make sure that people in Australia can live free from it, and we want to make sure that students, you know, can go to university and can study without being harassed, and some have been harassed. We want people to not be victimised because they might be wearing a Star of David or wearing a yarmulke, and those things have happened and they're all unacceptable.
Now, you say at the fringes, but nonetheless this is contained within the report, that she is expecting to work with the government on the kind of report card that I just described. Let me ask the question in this way. Is anti-Semitism, as the report claims, normalised at Australian universities and in their courses?
Well, I'm sure she wouldn't have put that in the report unless there were some Jewish students where that has been their experience. And as long as that's been the experience of any students, then that's unacceptable.
I think the question is not about one specific discrete experience. It's about the normalisation at a university. I think that's broader than the experience of a single student. The question is anti-Semitism per se normalised at Australian universities? Because that's what the report describes.
Yeah, and the report is, the envoy is independent. So this is a report to government, not a report of government. And the Prime Minister made clear when he and I stood either side of Jillian Segal that, you know, some aspects of the report can be implemented immediately. There's some where you work through it slowly, and there's a whole lot where you hope that you can find pathways to avoid anti-Semitism where some of the recommendations never need to be considered because you've found other pathways.
Let's just go to a couple of the other elements of it. In the report, Ms Segal says the envoy will provide anti-Semitism training to Home Affairs staff and anyone dealing with visas. Is that a role that you support her having input into who qualifies for entry into Australia?
I've been encouraging both Jillian Segal as anti-Semitism envoy and Aftab Malik, the Islamophobia envoy, to be engaging with the agencies, including the Department of Home Affairs, including with my arts agencies as well. I think everybody instinctively has a starting point against bigotry, but there can be different, softer ways that bigotry finds its way into decision-making, and to be able to have some people very much focused on this who are able to provide that sort of information is a good thing. So some of that has already been happening, but there'll be more of it.
Do you agree that the envoy should monitor public broadcasting for balance?
Oh, I think the envoys are monitoring what happens in the media all the time across all media
Tony Burke,
platforms, across social media.
I'm just going to jump in there. This is not an informal thing. This is saying inside a report that the envoy should have the ability, the capacity to monitor public broadcasters for balance. That's more than just watching and observing what's happening in the media. It's a much more active role than that. Do you support the envoy monitoring the ABC and SBS for balance?
Well, I'm not sure it is more than that. Like, if you're talking about monitoring, you know, these are public broadcasters where what they do is public, in the same way as free-to-air TV any free-to-air TV is public and is monitored and is watched. And if there are examples where envoys believe that there's anti-Semitism, then that's something that they would report on to the different networks, and you try to make sure that these things stop. You know, it's been received very much as though somehow the person may be in charge of decisions about balance. I think monitoring is something, you know, well before you get to those sorts of concepts.
Nonetheless, this is a position that's been given authority by the government. The report is being genuinely well received by you and the Prime Minister. I'll ask the question in a different way, because when questioned about what sorts of things would be being monitored, the envoy spoke about the ABC's reporting of the war in Gaza. So does it concern you that reporting the killings of tens of thousands of civilians in Gaza, targeting hospitals, a plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza, could be captured by this monitoring and labelled anti-Semitic?
Look, I think you referred to a specific example, and Radio National this morning, ABC Radio National, had a very good response to it, I thought, which was where they said that the objection that the envoy had put was in fact already covered in the article, and the ABC, once it had been drawn to their attention, had changed the headline, and an investigation had happened. They checked it up and had found that they'd been behaving consistently with the Charter. When I heard that response from the ABC this morning, I thought that was very thorough.
All right, so just briefly, the report is generally predicated on an acceptance in all areas of government of a specific definition of anti-Semitism, the use of which to control speech, monitor or control speech or debate has been clearly rejected by its author as something akin to McCarthyism. Why did the government endorse this particular definition of anti-Semitism?
I heard that interview this morning, and the person, I presume we're referring to the same person. I don't recall his name.
We are, yeah.
But I heard his interview. And Mr. Stern was particularly concerned not just about this definition, but his concern was any definition, and his real objection was about it being weaponised. My view is he's probably right that any definition will be weaponised, and so that was his one here. But I think it's also true that in the current climate, even if there were no definition, it would be weaponised in different ways. I've had, for example, some people throw accusations at me and my department when we've refused a couple of visas. I've found the definition actually pretty helpful in working through and making sure that there was absolute clarity that the decisions we had taken were in no way involving anti-Semitism. And the test, which I think is really helpful in that definition, is it refers to whether or not you have a double standard, which causes you to ask the question, would I make the same decision? You know, I've knocked someone back, for example, for arguing that Islamophobia was rational. Would I make the same decision if someone applied for a visa on a speaking tour and they wanted to argue that anti-Semitism was rational? Yeah, I'd stop them too. And that's specifically taken from the words of the definition. A lot of people, when they object to the definition, you show them the words at the top of the page and say, which bit do you object to, or what does this prevent you from saying that you would want to say? Their answer is always the way it gets weaponised. And I think it's the weaponisation that's the problem rather than any of those individual words.
All right, Tony Burke, thank you very much. We look forward to the full response to the report in due course. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be back.